The first lecture on Volume 3 of the History of Sexuality by Michel Foucault showed how sexual conduct was understood through dream interpretation and self cultivation. Now we turn to how medicine shaped the ethics of pleasure. In the imperial period, medicine was not just about treating illness, it was a technique of existence, a way of structuring daily life. Physicians like Galen, Rufus of Ephesus, and Soranus prescribed detailed regimens for when and how to engage in sexual activity. These regimens were not about moral prohibition but about health and self management. Galen's physiology of sexual pleasure is remarkable. He explains that nature or the demiurge created sexual pleasure as a ruse to overcome mortality. Living beings are made of corruptible matter, so they cannot live forever. To ensure the continuation of the species, nature implanted a powerful desire and intense pleasure in sexual activity. This pleasure acts as a sting that drives even irrational animals to procreate. The mechanism involves the accumulation of semen, heat, and pneuma, vital breath, in the sexual organs, creating a pressure that must be released. But the same mechanism makes the sexual act dangerous. Galen compares it to epilepsy and convulsions. The pneuma that swells the sexual organs seeks to escape violently, and if sexual activity is excessive, the body is deprived not only of semen but of vital breath. This is why the sexual act bears the symbols of epilepsy, as Ortius put it. The phases of sexual intercourse, tension, sweating, rolling of eyes, flushing pallor, weakness, mirror an epileptic seizure. The pathology of sexual activity has two poles. Satyriasis or priapism is a state of constant excitation that never resolves. The patient has erection without desire and sexual intercourse provides no relief. He loses all restraint and lapses into madness. Gonorrhea is the opposite, involuntary discharge of semen without erection, leading to exhaustion, premature aging, and feminization. The patient becomes shriveled, effeminate, and eventually dies of consumption. Both conditions reveal the dangerous nature of sexual pleasure. However, sexual activity also has therapeutic effects. It can heal diseases caused by phlegm, restore appetite, and calm anger and melancholy. The effects depend on individual temperament and circumstances. For some, sexual intercourse is beneficial, for others, it is harmful. The key is to know oneself and apply the right regimen at the right time. The regimen of pleasures prescribes careful attention to four variables: the purpose of procreation, the age of the subject, the time of day and season, and individual temperament. Procreation requires long-term preparation of body and soul. The farmer sows only after cleansing the soil. Similarly, parents must purify themselves before conceiving. The right age is several years after puberty, neither too early nor too late. The best time is after a moderate meal before sleep. The best temperament is hot and moist, cold and dry. Constitutions require special care. The medical regimen is not just about the body. The soul has an essential role to play. The soul must not be led astray by vain representations, empty desires, or the pursuit of pleasures as an end. Rufus of Ephesus offers a paradoxical formula: subdue the soul and make it obey the body. This does not mean the soul should be enslaved to bodily appetites. It means the soul should follow the natural reason that designed the body's mechanics. Animals follow the dictates of the body and nothing more. Humans should do the same, purifying the soul of all vain representations. The soul must distrust images, fantasiae, dreams, theatrical spectacles, memories, and even visual perceptions can stimulate empty desires that have no correlation with bodily need. Galen advises a friend who has given up sexual activity to purify his body and then let nothing enter his mind that might deposit images there, to refrain completely from spectacles, not to tell stories or recall memories which could stimulate his sexual desire. The gaze is the surest vehicle of passion. Ovid recommends that anyone trying to free themselves from love should let the light in during sex. The body's defects will be imprinted on the mind, giving rise to disgust. The soul must not seek pleasure as an end. Pleasure is the accompaniment of the sexual act, not its reason. Animals do not think pleasure is a good thing. Humans who think this way pursue pleasure for its own sake and become attached to it. The wise person, like Diogenes, discharges semen without seeking the pleasure that accompanies that emission. Masturbation in this context is not a perversion but the barest form of natural elimination. It corresponds strictly to need without passion or artifice. The second major focus of Foucault's analysis is marriage. In the classical period, marriage was primarily about the household and procreation. Husband's authority and wife's duties were defined by the roles in managing the household. But in the imperial period, a new conception emerged. Marriage became a personal bond between husband and wife, a relationship of affection and reciprocity. This transformation is visible in the Stoic text on marriage. Rufus argues that marriage is the highest form of community, stronger than friendship, brotherhood, or even the bond between parents and children. Human beings are conjugal animals, made to live in pairs. The desire of marriage is not just physical but also rational and social. It leads to the sharing of lives, not just the joining of bodies. The marriage tie is dual, universal, and singular. It is dual because it joins two partners in a common life. It is universal because it is a duty, not merely a choice. Everyone who wishes to live in accord with nature should marry. It is singular because it is stronger than any other human relationship. Musonius cites Alcestis, who died for her husband Admetus when his parents would not. The marriage bond surpasses even blood ties. This new conception of marriage requires a new ethics of sexual relations. Sexual pleasure must be confined to marriage. Musonius condemns even sexual relations with a courtesan because they are without that which makes them lawful. He extends this prohibition to relations with household slaves. The husband cannot have sex with a maidservant while forbidding his wife to have sex with the manservant. Symmetry of rights requires symmetry of obligations. The husband must show himself stronger by refraining from what is forbidden to the wife. The pleasures of marriage are complex. On one hand, sexual intercourse should have procreation as its goal. Pleasure as an end is unjust and unlawful even in marriage. On the other hand, sexual pleasure can strengthen the conjugal bond. Plutarch compares it to the seed from which mutual respect, kindness, affection, and loyalty grow. Solon's law prescribed that husbands must have intercourse with their wives at least 3 times a month, not just for procreation, but as a mark of esteem and affection. Sexual intercourse renews the marriage agreement, wiping out the complaints that accumulate in everyday living. The third major theme is the love of boys. In classical Greece, pederasty was a philosophical ideal. True love was love between men, free from the mere appetite that characterized relations with women. But in the imperial period, this ideal lost its vitality. The love of boys became a tired theme, repeated without conviction. The problem was no longer how to elevate pederastic love, but how to defend it against the claims of marriage. Plutarch's dialogue on love stages this conflict. The debate is between love of boys and love of women. But the real issue is the place of sexual pleasure in love. The advocates of boys argue that true love is spiritual, free from physical pleasure. But Plutarch shows that this position is untenable. Either the lover enjoys the boy's body in secret, in which case he has fallen from spiritual love, or the boy is violated, in which case there is no friendship. Plutarch argues for a single love that encompasses both sexes. The same eros that inspires love of boys can inspire love of women. What matters is not the sex of the beloved, but virtue and beauty. The difference is that love of women, and especially conjugal love, can integrate physical pleasure into friendship. This integration is what Plutarch calls charis, grace, or reciprocity. In marital relations, sexual pleasure can be the beginning of friendship, the seed from which mutual respect grows. The love of boys lacks charis. The beloved is either compelled or consenting. Either way, there is no genuine reciprocity. The lover and beloved are not equals. The boy cannot love back in the same way. This is why pedestry is an imperfect love, like drunkenness without wine, brought on by a brew of figs and barley. It has no fruit, no fulfillment. It is cloying and quickly wearied. Pseudo Lucian's Affairs of the Heart offers a more ironic treatment of the same theme. The debate between Charicles pro women and Callicratidas pro boys rehearses the traditional arguments. Charicles appeals to nature. Procreation requires the union of male and female. Callicratidas appeals to philosophy. Love of boys is a civilized development beyond mere necessity. Callicratidas wins the rhetorical contest, but the irony is that his victory depends on ignoring physical pleasure. Theomnestus, the listener, reminds everyone that the real pleasure of boys is not in looking into each other's eyes, but in kisses, caresses, and hands that wander beneath tunics. The romances of the period, Carytons, Carius and Calirrho, Achilles Statius, Leucippe and Clitophon, Heliodorus Ethiopica, all reveal a new erotics. The focus is on the symmetrical reciprocal relationship between a man and a woman. Virginity is highly valued, not as absentation from pleasure, but as a choice of life, a style of existence. The lovers save themselves for each other through adventures and trials. Their union is both physical and spiritual, a marriage that fulfills their love. This new erotics differs from the pedestric ideal. It organizes itself around the couple, not the friendship of men. It values virginity as integrity, not as the condition of spiritual friendship. It sees marriage as the telos of love, not a necessary concession to social demands. The love of boys becomes marginal, a theme for poetry and art, but no longer a vital focus of philosophical reflection. Foucault concludes by comparing the ethics of self-cultivation with Christian ethics. The core elements may be similar: economy of pleasures, conjugal fidelity, restraint in relations between men, but the modality of the relation to self is fundamentally different. In Greco-Roman ethics, the ethical substance is activity and force. In Christian ethics, it is finitude and evil. The mode of subjection is ethics of existence, not obedience to a personal God. The self-forming activity is self-mastery and regimen, not hermeneutics of desire. The telos is self-possession and enjoyment of self, not self-renunciation. The cultivation of the self is not a prefiguration of Christian morality. It is a different way of constituting oneself as an ethical subject. The austerity of the imperial period is not the anticipation of Christian asceticism, but the development of an art of existence centered on the self. This art of existence gave increasing emphasis to the frailty of the individual, the need for universal rules, and the importance of self-control, but it did not define sexual activity as evil, marriage as the only redemption for sin, or love of boys as unnatural. It was a stylistics of existence, a way of giving one's life a form that was beautiful and honorable.